Hi, my name is Ryan. Today I'm going to review Little Big Workshop from Mirage Game Studios. It's a management simulation game where the player builds a factory and decides what products will be manufactured by its staff. It's a game that poses a compelling challenge of efficiency to players, but it comes at the expense of a tone-deaf representation of workers. For this review, I was provided a Steam key. As a genre, the management sim has been around for a long time, whether it's restaurants, beach resorts, or entire cities. It's a curious genre where spreadsheets of incomes and outgoings are strangely engrossing for players where otherwise they are to be condemned as monotonous. The mechanics then feel right at home within the setting of factory production. Little Big Workshop has the player take on the role of a factory owner and manager, purchasing machines, hiring staff, taking on contracts, and generally overseeing the flow of operations as you might expect in a management sim. The first thing that is arresting about the game is its framing. The whole game takes place on a sheet of graph paper on the tabletop. Vans motor along the edge of the table to ferry equipment, supplies and goods. It's one of the cleverest framing devices I've seen in years and instantly transports me back to playing Micro Machines on PCs of yore. Aside from this flourish of perspective, Little Big Workshop embodies a cartoonish aesthetic of 3D curves and bouncing animations. Everything is nicely contrasted and communicated well through this art style. But the setting does have one inescapable disadvantage. It can seldom be said that the sound of drills and machinery creates a relaxing atmosphere. Crucial to the enjoyment of this game is the challenges it poses players, maintaining a kind of cyclical efficiency across the factory. What is special about this is how the game demands this efficiency across multiple layers of planning. In taking a contract to manufacture an item, a player must have three things: workers, equipment, and a blueprint. Workers come in two general flavours, operators and haulers. The latter will carry stock to supply areas and carry products waiting to be exported. The former will operate the machines to produce a product. Each product requires multiple machines to achieve completion, from bandsaws to painting stations to assembly workbenches. These levels of production are planned for during the blueprint phase, where a player links up each individual stage of an item to a machine or group of machines to share the load. In this blueprint phase, they can also choose materials and particular component designs. It all makes for a complex chain of efficiency, but where enough time is invested, it all begins to make sense. As each part is crafted, certain pieces of equipment might take longer than others, so it has a cascading effect on the rest of the product getting made. Players might be allured by the brute force approach of more machines and more staff, but there can be other more subtle ways of managing these problems with a curious eye. The game really rewards the efficiency of workflow from machine to machine, but there are things that get in the way of a player's understanding. The tutorial at the start guides the player through the fundamentals of contracts and managing the workforce, but some crucial information is left to the in-game encyclopedia. Though it's advertised as a sandbox, for the game to eschew important pieces of information makes the process of overcoming this efficiency puzzle all the more opaque. As pipelines are established and production underway, the factory can be beset by a few types of unique problems, reminiscent of Theme Hospital's infamous rat minigame. Gnomes may burrow underneath the factory, mould can grow, and spies can infiltrate the workplace. Each requires a slightly different solution and throws a spanner in the works as you wait for the cash to flow in. These are welcome distractions from constantly pushing fast forward and waiting for productions to finish, but they can grow repetitive. This pursuit of cyclical efficiency provokes what only a few games can do: furious note-taking and diagrams on pieces of paper outside of the game. From equipment lists to factory layouts, that the game requires this level of engagement is a testament to the challenge it asks of the player. However, there are troubling elements to the game. Its representation of labour is worrying at best and outright tone-deaf in places, especially in this particular point of late capitalism. There is a day-night cycle in the game, but it seemingly has no purposes beyond communicating the idea that your workers stay at the factory 24/7. They have no lives outside the confines of these walls. Each worker has an energy limit. When reached, they'll go in search of a break room, but workers can collapse on the floor and remain there for an extended period of time whilst they recover. The reason for these collapses can be that there weren't enough decorations in workrooms like plants or water coolers. These decorations come with snide remarks about pesky workers needing breaks, as if the game really regrets having to implement these items. Of course, it's all in the name of parody, and Mirage Game Studios have folded that within its cute aesthetic. But this is a slap in the face to those that have collapsed and died in Amazon factories, or the 5,000 preventable deaths of workers in American factories in 2017. With a cute aesthetic, a game can establish gaps in the system. If it's not supposed to represent absolute verisimilitude, then it can sidestep certain representational shackles. But at what point did the developers decide not to implement representations of workers' rights? Negotiating with unions for better pay and working conditions, implementing safety features like fire doors and sprinklers, organising worker shifts, or at the very least having a shift change where the factory employs a day crew and a night crew. The problem with this is how benign it makes these problems look. There seems to be no point or argument they're trying to make through parody of the workers' situation. They just exist as another cog in the machine. Little Big Workshop is unashamedly a celebration of capitalist gain at the expense of workers, especially as it gleefully rubs its hands at the thought of unpaid interns. It's a game which asks you an interesting question in efficiency, but it comes at the cost of sanitising the very idea of workers' rights and making the struggles that workers face across the world a benign issue.